It was my first week working the night shift as a security guard at the old textile factory on the edge of town. The place had been abandoned for decades, but the company that owned it wanted someone to keep an eye on things. I thought it would be an easy job, just walking around, checking doors, and staying awake. But I was wrong. The factory was massive, with long dark hallways and rows of rusted machinery that loomed like skeletons in the dim light. The air was thick with the smell of oil and decay, and every step I took echoed through the empty building. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness, and the shadows seemed to move when I wasn't looking. Around 2 a.m., I was making my rounds when I heard it, a faint humming sound, like a machine coming to life. My heart skipped a beat. The factory hadn't been operational in years, and all the power was supposed to be shut off. I followed the sound, my flashlight shaking in my hand, until I reached the weaving room. The machines were on. I stood there, frozen, as the looms rattled and clanked, their gears grinding like they hadn't been touched in decades. The sound was deafening, and the air was filled with the smell of burning metal. I tried to shut them off, but the control panels were dead, their screens black and lifeless. And then I saw them. Shadows, dozens of them, moving between the machines like workers on a shift. But they weren't solid. They were faint, almost transparent, like they were made of smoke. I could hear whispers too, faint and garbled, like they were speaking in a language I couldn't understand. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me. The machines grew louder, their noise drowning out my thoughts. I could feel hands grabbing at me, cold and bony, pulling me toward the machines. I don't know how I got out, but I remember stumbling into the parking lot, my uniform torn and my skin covered in scratches. The next day, I quit. I couldn't go back. A few weeks later, I found out the factory had been the site of a tragic accident decades ago. A fire had broken out during the night shift, trapping the workers inside. The machines had kept running as the flames consumed them. I still hear the humming sometimes, late at night, and I wonder, were they trying to warn me? Or were they looking for someone to take their place? I worked the night shift at the historic Rosewood Hotel, a place known for its grandeur and its ghost stories. The hotel was over a century old, and guests often reported strange occurrences, whispers in empty hallways, flickering lights, and the sound of footsteps when no one was there. But I never believed any of it, until that night. It was around 3 a.m., and the hotel was eerily quiet. Most of the guests were asleep, and the lobby was empty except for me. I was sitting at the front desk, scrolling through my phone to pass the time, when I heard it, a faint piano melody coming from the ballroom. The sound sent a chill down my spine. The ballroom was supposed to be locked at night, and no one had access except the staff. I grabbed my flashlight and headed toward the ballroom, my footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. When I pushed the doors open, the room was dark, but the grand piano in the corner was playing itself. The keys moved as if invisible hands were pressing them, and the melody was hauntingly beautiful. I stood there, frozen, as the music filled the room. And then it stopped. The silence was deafening. I shone my flashlight around the room, but there was no one there. Just the piano, sitting silently in the corner. I turned to leave, but the doors slammed shut behind me. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath. That's when I saw her. A woman in a flowing white gown, standing at the far end of the room. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, and her hair was tied up in an old-fashioned style. She didn't say a word, she just stared at me, her expression unreadable. I tried to open the doors, but they wouldn't budge. The woman started walking toward me, her feet not touching the ground. I could feel the air around me grow heavier, like I was being suffocated. "Leave," she whispered, her voice echoing in the empty room. I don't know how I got out, but I remember stumbling into the lobby, my hands shaking and my heart racing. The night manager found me there, pale and trembling, and asked what had happened. I told him everything, and he just nodded, like he'd heard it before. That's Eleanor, he said. She was a pianist who died here 100 years ago. She doesn't like to be disturbed. I never worked the night shift again. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, I hear that piano melody. And I wonder if Eleanor is still playing, waiting for someone to listen. I was working the night shift as a janitor at an old high school. The place was creepy enough during the day, but at night, it was like a different world. The halls were dark, the classrooms empty, and the only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights. Around 3 a.m., I was cleaning the gym when I heard it, a basketball bouncing on the court. I froze, my heart pounding. The gym was supposed to be empty. I grabbed my mop and walked toward the sound, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous room. The ball was bouncing on its own. I stood there, watching as it bounced higher and higher, like an invisible player was dribbling it. And then it stopped. The ball rolled toward me, stopping at my feet. I picked it up, my hands trembling, and that's when I heard the laughter. It was coming from the bleachers. I turned, my flashlight cutting through the darkness, and saw them, a group of kids sitting in the shadows. They were pale, their eyes hollow, and their clothes looked like they were from another era. One of them stood up and pointed at me. "You're next," he said, his voice cold and flat. I dropped the ball and ran, my heart racing. The laughter followed me, echoing through the halls as I stumbled out of the gym. I didn't stop until I was outside, the cold night air hitting my face. The next day, I quit. I couldn't go back. A few weeks later, I found out the school had been the site of a tragic accident years ago. A group of students had died in a fire during a basketball game. I still hear the laughter sometimes, late at night, and I wonder, were they trying to warn me? Or were they looking for someone to join their game? If you ever hear something in the dark, don't stay to find out what it is, because sometimes they're not just sounds. If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. And remember, the night shift isn't always as quiet as it seems.